Welcome to the Grow Senior Care Podcast. Forget about being average. We're here to redefine what's possible in both your business and your life. Get fired up because we're here to help you simplify your life, grow your business with less hassle, and love what you do. Now, here's your host, Jeremy Fuller from Grow Senior Care Marketing.
Hey, this is Jeremy with Grow Senior Care Marketing, and I'm so excited today to have a special guest on here, Dylan Maloney with Gracepoint Homecare, and they are out of Mobile, Alabama. They're doing some amazing things with home care, and I wanted to have him on the podcast today to share his story, his growth journey. They've been growing and exploding their home care agency with just growing and caring for more people in their local area. So there's a lot of good insights that I feel like the audience could get from this conversation. So stay tuned. And if you're looking for insight on how you can go from, $1 million to $2 million to $3 million to $4 million to $5 million and keep growing your agency while still maintaining quality, this is the podcast for you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your journey. I know that, you have your home care agency. Tell me how you got started.
Well, I, was definitely aware of a need in the community for home care. And I was presented the opportunity to join a local licensing agreement, sort of like a franchise. They had a brand, they had some SOPs, but not much. And I bought into that, bought a territory from them. I did that for a couple years. Its utility kind of ran out for me because it wasn't really a recognized brand and I was paying royalties and that sort of thing. And luckily, because it was only a licensing agreement and not a franchise agreement, I was able to buy out of that agreement and go independent. We did that back in 2020. We had been, growing our revenue pretty substantially every year since then.
That's awesome. So sounds like you kind of pivoted a little bit there out of necessity almost.
Yeah, it was out of necessity. I kind of have a unique market where I'm in Mobile. The base separates Mobile and Baldwin County, but Baldwin County was a different territory owned by another individual. And through my hard work of marketing to direct referral sources, I was getting referrals in Baldwin County that I was supposed to just hand over to the guy in Baldwin County because it was coming from my sources in Mobile, but the business was in Baldwin County. So it was just, it didn't have any benefit for me. So I wasn't getting anything in return for providing those clients. And because of that, right, I figured, hey, why not go independent and do business wherever I'd like to do business?
Yeah, makes sense. So what were those early days like building your team? I know that there's a lot of home care agencies that might be just starting out at $500,000 in revenue, starting to build that in-office team. They're still wearing a lot of hats themselves. And then there's, some people, some agency owners that are doing $1 million or more plus. What was those early days like, kind of stacking team members in your office, filling those roles, creating those processes?
Yeah. So, it was a lot of fun. I really kind of missed the days where it was just me and it was very simple. I didn't really have, all I had to do was market, hire caregivers, and make sure everybody got to work. And, that was it. And I did it all and myself in the co-working space. And I'd have applicants meet me there and do everything else out in the field. And it was a lot of fun. But as we grew it pretty quickly, so it became apparent that I needed some help. And what I did is, there was a caregiver named Mia. She was awesome. She would always text me updates about the clients. Anytime I called her, needed someone to go in and cover a shift, she was on it. And, in a matter of minutes, She was just very reliable. You know, I always said that she would run through a brick wall for us, and she did. So I promoted her to like a care coordinator role. And we ran, but it was just me and her for at least a couple of years. You know, we were probably doing 1,000 hours a week, just the two of us. So, you know, I do think you can be pretty lean and mean, in this industry.
I was going to say, that's what I see so often today, Dylan, because I talk to a lot of home care agency owners, and some of them have like 4 or 5 people in the office, less than 1,000 hours a week. And I'm like, what is going on here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's necessary. I mean, now we're doing 2,000 hours a week. And we still only have 6 people in the office. And over the last year, we've really, things are going well. We haven't had any major issues or complaints. But as we've gotten bigger, I've just kind of gotten more of a defensive mode where I'm like, okay, let's make sure that, we're out there protecting our reputation and doing a good job. So we hired a director of nursing. We've implemented a full day orientation program. We have a lot of policies and procedures in place to ensure our caregivers are trained and the clients are getting quality of care. Make sure they know that they're getting what they need out of us.
Do you do any like drip feed training for caregivers to like send them ongoing, best practices and training and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We started a monthly newsletter probably about a year ago. And then we met with our insurance people a month or two ago, and he suggested sending out monthly trainings. And so we have started doing that as well through Homecare Pulse. So we pick a subject, we highlight it in the newsletter, say, hey, follow this link to complete your additional training on this subject.
That's awesome. And it kind of keeps track of their progress.
Right. Yeah. They all have a login. So it shows us if they've completed it. There's a test afterwards. It shows them if they, understood what they learned, and that sort of thing.
Have you thought about like putting in, is there a reward system in place for something like that if they're completing X amount or, logging in, getting that done?
That's in the pipeline. It's been tough to implement fully, but we have kind of a general idea of where we want to go with that. Like, if someone completes all the dementia training, we'll give them a badge that says it's, they're a dementia certified caregiver. Or there's a fall risk module as well that you're a fall risk certified caregiver. The plan is to kind of, when we do their performance reviews, to, give them a better rate increase or pay increase if they've completed those trainings. In Alabama, you don't have to provide training. So we've set ourselves apart by providing that training. And
yeah,
we want our caregivers to complete the training and be incentivized to do so, but we also at the same time don't want to not send somebody to work who's been through orientation, who's qualified to provide the care because they haven't completed the training. So we're kind of walking a fine line, like, hey, we want this, but it's hard to say you have to do this or you can't go to work. We've got a lot of clients that we got to take care of, but they know the resources there. They are taking advantage of it, and most of them seem to enjoy it. Since we started the orientation program and since we rolled out the training program, our training scores on Homecare Pulse have greatly increased, and we get a lot of good feedback about them.
Good. So you're getting feedback from the clients like, hey, I like this, or this is better, stuff like that.
Yeah, we're getting good feedback from the clients for sure, but mainly what I was referring to was the caregiver feedback, because Homecare Pulse calls them as well. And that's one of the questions they ask, how do you feel about the training this organization provides you? And, we're getting 10s out of 10s.
That's awesome. Good. Yeah, that's some kind of similar situation here in Oklahoma for our home care agency that we're starting. It's not mandated that we do that. I mean, obviously we train them, so there's an orientation day, but like ongoing, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do something very similar. That's planned in the pipeline to implement something like that. It's kind of funny. We have all these things that we know we need to do or we can do, but it's another thing of actually getting it in place and working in your business.
Right.
But good stuff to hear that it's working for you pretty well.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to shift a little bit to like the day to day. So do you have any like KPIs that you measure things with different team members? And you mentioned you have 6 team members. You've got the caregivers. What kind of KPIs are you measuring? And are you measuring any KPIs?
Yeah. So, we've recently gotten into EOS, and I know Jeremy does that as well. But even before we started EOS, we used a scorecard that was at one point derived from EOS. And in that scorecard, we track revenue, we track, average hours per client, we track new clients, we track prospects, we track new hires, we track how many people still need to complete orientation, we track Google reviews. Yeah, all it's nice. And weekly meeting to sit down and say, hey, we didn't get any Google reviews last month. We all make it a priority to get out there and do that. I mean, there's always one to be found. Even if it's just from your even if it's just from your caregivers, it makes a huge difference. I mean, they're easier to get from your caregivers than from their clients. They seem to be more willing to post one. And you can build a lot of traction on Google. I don't think Google cares whether it's from a caregiver or a client. They're going to use it to rank you.
They don't. There's some FTC guidelines and stuff like that. And I will share this. Obviously, the main one that home care agencies need to be aware of and avoid is review gating, right? So, in other words, let's say you were to ask a caregiver or a client or a friend for a review. If it's a friend or a caregiver, that's more of a character reference type reviews. I'll give you an example. If you go to a park, well, there's no monetary transaction that happens there. It's free. I've even seen reviews for churches, right? So at the end of the day, you can get character reference reviews. It's fine. They know you, they know your character, they know your quality, right? And if they know those things, they can speak on those things, right? And so the problem comes into review gating. And essentially what that is for the people listening is when you were to, let's say somebody sends out an automated text or an email, hey, would you give us a review? And you use that wording, will you give us a review? And then they click on it, and instead of going straight to the review sites like Google, Facebook, Yelp, etc., there's a little survey where it asks them to fill out, their experience. And if the experience is bad on the survey, then they don't let them go leave a review. They forward them off and say somebody's going to reach out to you or something. That's review gating, right? So we don't recommend that companies do that. But do get reviews, and there's a lot of debate in the space. Oh, you shouldn't get caregivers to leave you reviews, or you shouldn't have friends. But from everything, I've been doing this for 20 years. That's fine as far as I know, unless I'm always open for education and learning, but I haven't heard any issues with that.
I'd like to add to that though, too. I mean, asking for a friend or a vendor to leave a review, that for sure is asking for a character review, like just vouch for my business. But I don't think that caregiver reviews should really fall into that category, because the caregivers are saying, hey, this is a great place to work. They work here. They know.
Yeah.
And helps you attract caregivers. I mean, there was a time during COVID where it was harder to get caregivers than it was to get clients. So that was huge. And that happened again. So A, it helps you get more caregivers, and B, I think that information is useful for a prospect looking for an agency. Like if I'm on Google and I find, an agency with no reviews versus an agency with 50 reviews, if they're all caregivers, you at least know like, hey, this must be a well-run organization. So I think caregiver reviews can have a lot of credibility even with your prospects is my point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point. I think there's opportunities to do that. And if a company's scared of doing that, just get past that, because like you said, it kind of speaks to the education. You don't have to do the continued education, but you do, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going above and beyond with your training. And so, if a caregiver even talks about that, right, that's fine. And it's good. It's good. It's good information. So
Yeah.
I'm on board with you on that, Dylan. So you mentioned you're tracking KPIs, and it sounds like you're tracking, a variety of different ones. If you were to share with the audience maybe what you feel like are the top 3 that really matter to you as an owner, what would those top 3 KPIs that you're like, okay, I need to make sure these top 3 things are running smoothly? Do you mind sharing some of those?
Yeah, I'd say margin, revenue, and prospects.
Okay. Yeah, those are good. Anything you want to share on that?
Sure. So, I mean, margin's really important. It's easy to get carried away with trying to find more caregivers, and maybe you've lifted the pay rate for that and you haven't been able to lift the bill rates, or maybe you've lowered your bill rates to try to land a new prospect or a new client, but now there's no margin, and in that margin too, it can kind of help you track over time as well. Our goal is to continue to grow. So prospects are, of course, very important in that realm. So we have a goal to have 10 prospect calls a month, and that's important to us.
Do you have any KPIs measuring like boots on the ground, sales team type stuff?
Not really. We don't have a sales team. When I started this business, I was a sole salesperson. I did hire another salesperson for a time. That went well, but she left. And so now, when I hired who's now my VP, she was supposed to be the new salesperson, but she got in and, revealed herself as an integrator. If you follow EOS, you know what I'm talking about. So we made her the integrator, VP. And really we've been able to grow over the last 2 years pretty substantially, even without doing outside sales.
Okay. So that kind of gets me to my next question. How?
Yeah. So Dawn has a great referral source that sends us a lot of business, and she's been, even though she's not really sales per se, she's got a great relationship with a group that gives us a lot of business. And then I think, secondly, on the private pay side, I think it's all digital, which is, of course, where Darren.
Yeah. Walk me through that a little bit. So you have one of the KPIs, prospects coming in, and there's not a salesperson, boots on the ground. So I remember we talked months ago, right? And you're like, I attribute a lot of this to SEO. So kind of walk me through that. What's going on that you're seeing on just the growth on the KPIs that you're measuring?
When we started Gracepoint, when I went independent, well, let me start before that. So when I was with the licensing agreement.
So Jesus was born.
So when I was with the old licensing agreement, the guy the licensor, I guess is what you call him, he didn't seem to think digital marketing was important. And that was one thing that really always bothered me about that. And it was hard for me to contribute any money to digital marketing because I knew it wouldn't just benefit me, it would benefit, him and the bordering territories that were on my territory. Because, it's a circle, and that circle on Google would cover his ground too. And so that always bugged me. I always thought we needed to spend more money on digital marketing. But that was one of the reasons I left. But anyway, so then once I started Gracepoint, people that built my website, I hired them to do SEO and SEM too. They were not very good at it. I mean, I don't know. I think I was on page three or four on organic. the ads, I guess, are on page one no matter what, but I wasn't getting any good. I was getting people calling because they wanted us to pick up their CPAP machine. And we're like, okay, but we don't provide CPAP. And so that CPAP machine doesn't belong to us. So anyways, through the Independent Home Care Alliance, I got introduced to Jeremy. I hired him. He rebuilt my website, which I was honestly reluctant to do because I liked the way my old website worked. I mean, looked, not worked, but looked. But I agreed to. I think Jeremy had to convince me that this was the way to go, and so I let him.
And for those of you listening, that's me.
Yeah, that's Jared. Sorry, I guess I'm talking to the audience instead of you. But anyways,
no, that's okay.
So then once you created that website, I don't know how long it took, but we were on the front page pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I know it was a little bit faster. And what I always tell people is that when we redo a site, right? When it bounces that fast to, I don't think it was like all the keywords there was still keywords that we had to work on, and we still are even today, but there was a few keywords that really helped get immediate growth, right? Immediate traction. And when I see stuff like that, that's usually an indicator that the website had some kind of authority attached to the domain prior, but the on page was holding it back. And so that's why we redo the sites when somebody comes onto our digital marketing program, right? Stuff like that. And so that might have been it. We also get all the citations done right. There's a bunch of stuff that we do. So there's a multiple factors here. The way that I explain it to people is that, SEO is not necessarily like it's this one thing or this thing. And if you just focus on that, you're going to rank, right? It's more about like loose change. So you might find 1 cent here, and that's a task or a couple of tasks. You might find 5 cents there, and then you total all those things up, and you might have $1, right? And then you do the next stuff. You do those tasks, and then you might have $2, right? So it's just a building, right? But that's exciting to hear that, it's working for you. I think there's a lot of home care agencies. I've talked to a lot of home care agencies, and their website hasn't been touched since 2003, because they focus, like there was I'm not going to say the person's name. There's somebody that came to us about a month ago, and they primarily get most of their clients from Medicaid. And so they didn't really focus on the digital side of things. And what I shared with them is that, well, you could be getting Medicaid clients as well from online, because there are, people that call that aren't happy with the company that they're with, and now they're looking for another company that provides Medicaid, right?
You get Medicaid calls all the time. I mean, not all the time, but we get them. They commit, but it's there, and I don't know if there's a way to filter those out on the keyword side. I kind of doubt there is. So I'm good with it. But yeah, I mean, we certainly get.
There is. We have a strategy, at least for Google Ads, right? And one thing is that I've audited hundreds of Google Ad accounts. One keyword, and this is a little thing just for those of you listening, whether you're watching this or listening, one thing that you can do on your own is if you're running Google Ad accounts, and I'll just share a few, Dylan, this is one of the biggest things that we do to filter out a lot of the Medicaid calls, right? And this should already be there for your account, is there's a keyword that usually gets added for Google Ads. When I see this, I've seen this on big franchises, almost probably 8 out of 10 accounts that I audit on Google Ads, I see this. And the keyword is typically senior care services county name. So what's the county there for you?
Mobile.
Okay, so it'd be something like Senior Care Services, Mobile, Alabama, right? Or it might be reversed, Mobile, Alabama, Senior Care Resources. And typically when they type that in, if you look at the Google search results, it's like Medicaid resources, it's like Meals on Wheels. It's not even necessarily even home care, right? But it eats up a lot of the Google ads. And then when people do call, they ask about Medicare. So we block that by default. But you're right. There are some keywords that there's Medicaid calls that still come in on general keywords like home care near me. There's not, we can't, we're trying to get private pay obviously on that. There's not a lot we can do about that, right? So yeah. Well, if you were to share something with somebody that is, wanting to get started with KPIs, wanting or on the fence about, maybe getting their digital marketing done right, because they might be, from 2003, what would you share with them about getting, starting EOS? We use EOS here. I love it. And there's many different ways to track it. What would you share about EOS, and what would you share about maybe getting into the 20?
I think it's so important. I mean, I'm 36 years old, so, I'm probably one of the first generations that relies on Google for like anything I wonder or any service I need, I Google it first. So I'm pretty naturally inclined to want to have good digital presence. But yeah, I mean, it's a slam dunk. Like as I alluded to before, I was getting a lot of junk calls from, other digital marketing agencies. And with Grow, I've been able to eliminate, the vast majority of those. So tracking those prospects, tracking where you are listed on organic searches, seeing how your ads are working. I mean, I think all that is very crucial to your success in a modern day home care agency, especially if you're private pay.
Got it. And you're doing that with EOS, with those KPIs. And then, just speaking on tracking, I think that's key, because I've done audits with home care agencies and they don't know where they rank. They haven't touched their website. They're paying money many times to, somebody overseas or this big franchise marketing system, and they don't know if they're getting results or not. So I always tell people, and I'd love to hear your thought, instead of, gauging, well, do you do a blog post? Well, do you do a social media post? Okay, you do. Well, how much do you charge? Instead of measuring off that to try to weigh a decision, I always tell people you need to look at case studies, right? So this would be a great case study, you and your home care agency. But do you agree with that? Because it becomes so, like, you'd have to have a PhD in SEO digital marketing to know, to compare apples to apples, right? Because there's no baseline for SEO.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you can get up on the front page, if your Google Ads can work and provide the quality calls that you're looking for, I think that's all that really matters. I mean, of course, price matters too. But we feel like we get great value. I mean, home care is a great industry. You spend $1,000 on something and you win one client on it, you're ahead by a lot.
That's compounding return on investment. You don't have to pay for them next one.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. It's like, when I was doing traditional or general marketing, I guess you could say, for lawyers, doctors, like a plastic surgeon, we have plastic surgeons, right, as clients. And I always make this joke. Home care is a good business because if you get a client month 1, you can keep them month 2, 3, 4, right? As long as they are still living or they're not leaving because of a bad caregiver. But what I find is that there's other businesses that isn't so good, like a plastic surgeon. He can only do surgery on that nose so many times until it falls off. So, home care is a good business. Well, Dylan, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Any last things that you want to share with anybody before we jump off? I know that you mentioned about the, tracking things.
If you're looking for an operating system or digital marketer, EOS, if you're looking for an operating system, Growing Home Care Marketing, if you're looking for a digital ad agency, give it a try. Can't go wrong.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening today. If you have questions for Dylan, feel free to reach out to him. You can leave it in the comments. You can reach out to us, and we're here for you. So we'd love to connect with you on social media. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Send us a message, reach out, friend us. We're here for you. Appreciate you guys. Have a blessed day.